It's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, listen, what's going on in your world?
Oh,
Anything
not much.
exciting?
You just before we started, you noticed that I have a few videos that I've posted.
Matt's doing the news. Dun, dun.
Matt's AI news every day. There's enough AI news every day.
You doing daily? Oh.
I'm doing a daily news.
There's only two other people out there. I won't let the audience know who they are. I'm doing the daily news stuff. There's another Matt though.
Oh, what, Matt Wolf?
Yeah. The one who's always generating images of Wolf. This is how I know his last name.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think. I mean, it's been a while since I've watched his stuff. I think he's focused more on the AI tools side.
Yes. In fact, I think he's the one that runs the Future Tools website. Is
Future
that not
Tools,
him?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, and I need to watch his stuff more recently because it's been a long time since I've watched anything by him. But most of what I've covered I covered the Hermes 3 model, and so what's special about that, and actually showing how to convert in and import the model into Ollama before Ollama posted the model themselves. But a lot of it has been about, government's view of AI and should they regulate or not.
Right.
Court cases about AI.
Oh, exciting.
But yeah, I mean, it's been pretty interesting.
But it does feel like we're getting serious if we're now into policy, right? Like one of the things that concerns me is that like you shouldn't need the policy. Maybe we would have thought of this beforehand, but as people are starting to use these things, then policies will come into fruition, which tells us that it's being more and more used, which is good.
There's a great article in The Economist about AI and regulation and looking at how the U.S. does it versus China versus EU. And then there was another thing that I covered this morning was Trump or somebody in the Trump camp created images showing Taylor Swift and her Swifties for Trump.
Right. Now,
and
my understanding is this person,
accepted.
did in fact publish some of these images on X account or Twitter account.
Yeah.
Yes. I heard that last part.
And so could that image and the endorsement of that image actually be illegal? And so there was an article in TechCrunch this morning about that, or yesterday about that.
I found the other Matt, by the way. So there's Matt
Berman?
Wolf. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's now 3 Matts of AI news.
Oh yeah. So Matt Wolf, I think, was the first. Matt Berman showed up, and I remember
neither are that great in quality. Sorry, like I do watch them. Apologies to them because I do watch it, but they're in terms of quality, it's not that.
Well, their stream, or do they actually stream, or it's a polished show?
Berman might be Twitch streams that are cut up later, and then Wolf is definitely not streamed.
And so my stream is definitely not super sharp during the stream.
Right.
But then I am posting within 1 to 4 hours. I'm posting the polished version.
Oh, it's a twofer. Yeah.
Not a pre-recorded, but just the higher resolution version of the stream.
Oh, you don't cut it up with Descript or anything like that?
Well, I'm also adding the chapter markers for each of the different topics I cover, and adding a description, and I think that's really about it. And showing what article I'm talking about, and so all that gets posted. Yeah, today's one I finished, and I think it's just. Oh, actually, no. It looks like it's done. Let me switch it over to.
We're going live. Matt's going to do this live, folks. So this is Command Central, where Matt clicks all of the buttons on all the computers and publishes stuff.
Go publish.
Here we go.
Okay, so the AI news for today is now published.
Amazing.
But don't watch it.
Can I report it for like terms of use or something? Let's see how many reports it takes to take it down. I'm teasing. Don't do this. Don't do this.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. So that that got posted just now. I mean, I had it finished.
I see them now. There's a bunch of these. Sorry, I was looking at the live section. Oh,
yeah,
right on. It's even got a clever. Oh, look, there's you got a date on there. I will say that the blue is a little bit hard to read inside of the black. I understand that you used an outline.
Yeah.
I hate to be that person, but you got to work on the contrast. But otherwise, this is pretty cool.
Totally. I actually started.
Oh, you're even wearing a Datadog shirt in one of these? Phenomenal.
Am I?
Yep, the 17th.
Okay. Sure.
Phenomenal.
And yeah, and I also, so today there were those two things. I did briefly look at that GitHub's AI survey. And then there was a discussion of Meta has a self-taught evaluator tool for generating training data.
That's cool.
And then opened up with the Hugging Face. Hugging Face posted a tutorial called Le Robot for creating a AI-powered robot. Using, I mean, even the arm, creating an arm. And it's really pretty cool.
This is really cool.
The version now requires a bit of 3D printing, and it costs a decent amount. And the new version coming soon is like $150 in parts and no 3D printing. And but it kind of reminded me of, do you remember, I feel like it was 2-3 years ago, there was the AWS, the car, the remote control car.
Yeah, I do.
But you had to buy like this $1,000 car.
Yeah. And you had to race that they're like sanctioned.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was the whole thing.
So this seems a lot more accessible and...
Deep Racer. I had to Google.
Yeah, Deep Racer, yeah.
Yeah, this looks awesome.
Yeah.
And it's all PyTorch, which I also find kind of interesting.
So yeah. I'm trying to do it every day. I suck at the time. So I was going to do like 10:30 in the morning. And today was 12:30. 12:38.
I hear this. Yeah, sorry, I'm still kind of wowed by this. This is really...
Wait, by me or by the tutorial?
All one word. Le Robot, yeah.
Le Robot.
This is, yeah. I mean, Matt, listen, I'm constantly wowed by how cool you are. That's like steady state.
Keep going. Yeah, I'm ready.
Sorry, that's it. That's all I got. I think your head will expand so large that there's no wide angle lens that would keep it in the frame.
But I've had up to like 16 people in the stream
as you're doing it.
As I'm doing it.
That's awesome. I mean, one of these has 882 views.
I know.
That's the one with the Datadog shirt. In fact, look at that.
It's all Datadog. Yeah.
That's really cool.
I stopped doing posts to TikTok like a few months ago.
Right.
And I noticed that the day, because my views were pretty good. I mean, I was like a couple thousand views on any one video. Mm-hmm. But then it all went to 0. Just totally tanked. And it tanked the day starting the day I wore a Datadog shirt.
Interesting.
And then it stopped, and then it never recovered.
Interesting. Maybe they reported you for like ad, like in ad or something.
I don't know.
Like that. Yeah. That platform is maybe not the platform for me.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't really
I've tried
touched it
to get
since.
into TikTok.
Yeah.
I realize there's Book Talk, which I kind of find cool, like Book TikTok. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of, like, at least when I was on there, a lot of mechanical keyboard stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just the signal to noise ratio was so bad. There's so much noise and dancing and just not much.
Yeah, it seemed like, I would every time I'd go to the app, I'd see just garbage. Mm-hmm. And then I think I had asked somebody about it, and they said, well, create a new account and just follow, the people that you really want to follow, and then see what happens. And then it was like all perfect. Like it was cool. Kubernetes and dev stuff and all sorts of other interesting topics, nonstop. But gradually, like video would pop in.
Right. That's what happened.
That was weird about dancing with while the car's moving and the dog bouncing around.
Yeah,
and then you get more of those, then you get more of them, and then there's more of the
like a deluge
body paint
or
weird
what they call them, stitches,
stuff.
like people just responding to things.
Yeah,
it's just like low effort content.
So
yeah. Oh well.
And then I just stopped completely.
I hear you. So tell me about this AI and software development survey. What did we learn?
AI and software. Oh, it's software development
GitHub.
survey.
Yeah.
No, it was interesting. Do you have it up?
I sure do. Yeah. So I got as this is really sad. The second
you got as
chart,
far as over the past 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really read all the second and third chart, kind of just in terms of the makeup of the growing AI wave in software development, for example. So like who's using coding tools?
Let's blow people's minds here.
Whoa, this looks awful. It's way too small to read.
Is it?
It is, unfortunately.
Let's see.
Oh,
Can we
it's just like
hide people?
I see why. It's because it's just tiny there.
Oh, do I need to make it bigger?
I think so. Or landscape instead of. Yeah, yeah.
Is that good? Is
There we go. Much, much better.
that even better?
Even better. Let's see if I can actually see it
Okay.
on the screen. It's quite blurry, but that could just be because it's
Yeah,
live.
I don't know why.
Yeah, but it
I
certainly
think
is showing it.
everything on the stream is blurry until the
Oh,
better recording goes on.
gotcha. Fair enough.
Coming your way.
You said what?
Somebody at the
Jane's
door.
coming your way.
Okay. Bye.
Dog.
Let me move my view of.
So I think the main thing for me, like where I kind of stopped and started to think, is like according to GitHub, almost every respondent has used AI coding tools at work.
Yes.
And that could be like one time or more. That just at least once.
Yeah, I mean, there's another survey that came out like in the last couple of days from Australia, and it's more general citizens of Australia commenting about AI, and they were very much like 10% or 4% or something like that had even touched AI tools. And so this is a very specific, I mean, it's GitHub. So it's definitely a focused, I mean, it's people who are developers.
Right.
And GitHub has
Right.
Copilot.
This is what I was thinking about, right? Yeah. So most people who use GitHub have tried Copilot once.
Yes. Because it was free for a long time.
Yeah.
It's only pretty recent that it's not free.
Right.
And so if you ask that same question next year about have you used it in the last year, will that have gone down because it's no longer free?
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess that was that first graph there, the one that's like kind of
Yeah.
mostly pink with a little bit of blue in it.
Yeah. Although not as pink in Germany.
Right. And I kind of noticed that, I guess, going through a lot of this, I did kind of notice the numbers were skewed a little bit in Europe. I don't know if you noticed that as well, but it seems like
No. Like-
the uptake of these tools in Europe are lower than in the US. Yeah, and I think you can kind of see this when it comes to the next graph as well.
And I think this one or the next one?
The next one that has like USA, Brazil, Germany, and India in terms of their companies' adoption.
The quality of the code?
No, the one you've got up right there, U.S. and
That one,
India.
okay.
Yeah. So like India, for example, seems to be more interested in trying to get people to use these tools,
Right.
just as a whole, or the people on GitHub from India who responded to this survey. I guess to put a
Right.
fine point
Yeah.
on it.
One thing that I noticed was that the questions seem to be less ambiguous
Right.
than what we
Like Stack
saw in the
Overflow.
Stack Overflow.
Yeah, agreed. It
But
feels like a
they
better
had
survey.
they had a professional organization that Wakefield Research or something do the survey, and they probably spent a lot of time getting their questions right.
Yeah, I would say like it just going through this is way way better.
Yeah.
'Cause, like,
Yeah.
it shows the actual question asked. It's just a lot
Right.
more. It's a better way
Without having to
present info.
hover over to see the details.
You got it.
Yeah. Let's go bigger. Oh,
Oh, there we go. Much better.
there you go.
Much better. At least then we can read the top. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Is this on your iPad that you're sharing it from?
No, I'm sharing it from my desktop
Very cool.
through the web app.
Wow. Are you using a trackpad?
I am.
Okay. Just for the audience, like, the being
Why
able to
would
zoom-
anybody
being
use
able to
a mouse?
zoom in on a page using a trackpad is such like a mind-blowing thing for some people.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. Quick,
Yeah, I don't
quick aside
understand
here,
why
the trackpad's
people-
amazing.
I don't understand
Still
why
use
people
the
like
mouse?
mice.
Yeah, it's archaic. In fact,
Yeah.
I still feel like a trackball is better than a mouse. But
Yeah.
anyway, I digress. Okay, so the easy part here coming up. AI coding tools make it easier to adopt new programming languages and understand existing code bases. Yeah. So I think the pink is easy, and then purple is very easy. Is that right?
Purple is challenging.
Challenging, my apologies. and then very easy.
I don't know that AI coding tools make it challenging to.
Right?
I mean, find it easy, yes.
Well,
But
pink is easy, and purple is
pink is
challenging.
easy, yeah. It seems strange that it's.
Why does it say
It goes straight
29%
from.
find it very easy?
Yeah, that does seem.
Am I wrong in thinking these are backwards?
I feel like, I mean, unless it's a really bad tool. I mean, I guess, depends on the tool. If you're just relying on a Copilot, maybe because the context isn't as large and it doesn't have as much access to your entire code base, it's not going to make it easy. It's not going to make it challenging. It's just not going to make it easy. It's just going to be the same as it was.
Right.
That said, there are a number of other startups that have gotten a lot of money recently about trying to make it easier to understand legacy code bases.
Right.
In fact, there's one.
The point under this that I think you and I have been talking about since the inception of these tools is like generating fake data or test data. 98% reported that their organizations have experimented using to generate test cases or tests, which I think is phenomenal. Oh, how was yours highlighted there? Did you happen to highlight this on your own?
I highlighted it ahead of time.
Yeah, it's a great conclusion, honestly, because I feel like a lot of people understand this, but if you've yet to use any of these tools, this might not be obvious to you yet. In that generating test cases are great. Is great.
And this is the use case that I personally have never done.
No way. Not even
I've
like
never
fake
done this.
CSVs or anything like that. That was the first thing I did. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think I have.
Do you write tests for your code?
No, I don't.
There we go. No, honestly, I'm pretty terrible at it.
Why would
too,
somebody
but
bother
I put it
with?
in front of somebody else, I gotta write test cases.
I think I have.
Standard JavaScript developer response.
Yeah. That's going to slow me down.
I'm teasing. Please don't get me up in the comments.
I'm an expert developer. I don't need that test stuff.
Full stack developer.
Yeah.
And again, the least, the people who trusted them for test cases, the least was Germany yet again.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, and there's actually a graph. Sorry, I had not seen the graph that just passed this. This is probably as far as I've gotten. What else we got here? Design systems, I mean, that kind of makes sense.
I feel, I think we've also gotten past the point where I have really invested time reviewing. That's the last of my highlights.
I mean, I can scroll through a little bit. One of these in here that I find interesting is that
I kind of wish they didn't use the same two charts.
Right.
There was some variety in the chart.
Yeah,
I guess once you finally figure it out, it's kind of nice to have the same pattern used, so you're able to adjust quickly. But
the next one is about the security tools, helping them with improved code security, which I think is pretty interesting, especially when it comes into like automated fuzzing or AI-assisted fuzzing, which I think is amazing. And we've seen a lot of exploits recently. I'm not saying Gen AI was involved or anything like that, but the amount of exploits I've seen since 2022 and the severity all the way down to chip level makes me wonder if people are fuzzing a little bit more easily with Gen AI. Because it's not easy. It takes a long time. And especially if you're using this to create test case that can help you fuzz, it seems like that might be a leg up.
Now, for the benefit of people in the audience, purely, what is fuzz?
Let's find a Wikipedia definition of fuzzing.
I know exactly what you mean, but for the audience,
I'll tell you my definition, and we'll see if it sticks. So one way that I think about fuzzing is like, imagine I have a signal going into like an Arduino or something like that. And in back in the day, one of the things I might be doing is bit bashing, just trying to send signals to it to figure out what it responds to, or like listening to, I don't know, some other USB device trying to figure out what's happening. My understanding is fuzzing is kind of sending like fuzzy noise to it to sort of see what happens, but generating that noise or coming up with it is difficult. Now let's check the Wikipedia definition to see if I'm right, because I think I might have maybe have it confused a little bit with bit bashing. So let's find out. Automated software testing techniques that involves providing invalid, unexpected, or random data as inputs to a computer program. Okay, so not too far.
Okay. Okay.
And then it's monitored for crashes, failing assertions, or mem leaks. Okay, so not great. Obviously, we're talking about
Right.
software, not the physical domain, but similar. Giving it a random stream. I think the problem I had is that I couldn't come up with like novel enough ideas to just shove down the stream to figure out what happened. Especially if it's like what have I done before? Like infrared remotes, just trying to figure out like what the blips are, and trying to figure out
Right.
if I can like throw something that's whatever.
Like I mean, the CD player in my car could have been better tested than it was.
Gotcha.
I think I feel like I told you this story about my
Maybe not.
CD.
I do
So-
like CD players in cars though. This is one
So-
of my favorite topics.
I had a Saab 900
Okay.
SPG from 1988. No, the second one I had was 1992.
That's pretty early for a
and-
CD player, is what I'm thinking immediately.
Okay. Well, this was a aftermarket, like a one that was installed
Okay.
by the previous owners, and I bought the car from a couple in Petaluma, California. I was living in San Francisco, Silicon Valley at the time. I buy this car, and they say, well, it's great, except the CD player. Every now and then, it'll eject. We've taken it back to the, sound guys or whatever the
Right.
chain is that installs these things, and we've gotten a new unit, and the same thing happens every now and then.
Interesting.
We don't know why. And it took a while, but I finally discovered the problem.
Okay.
And I discovered the problem. I actually went into a parking lot,
Right.
and I just kind of drove around, and I figured out what the problem was.
Like you
The
put
pro-
on the
the-
left turn signal and it comes out or something?
No. The CD only ejects when the sunroof is open,
What?
and only when pointed in a certain direction.
What?
So
I
when
love this.
pointed
This is a
in
talk. How is this not a talk? About software testing and how Matt decided to learn to write tests for his awful JavaScript code. This sounds amazing. This is definitely the start to a talk.
when
Audience,
you're-
let's take this guy to task. I want to hear
when
this in
you're
public.
pointed with the sun behind you,
Okay.
then the CD would eject.
Because
In a certain angle.
the sun's rays
Because
would hit the eject
The
button.
sun's rays would hit the CD, like the slot for the CD, and there was some sensor inside that would say, like
it
the
wasn't
CD
sealed.
is blocked, and so it would eject.
That is amazing.
Yeah,
That is amazing. So presumably like an aftermarket player then, not like
Yes,
because I did look
absolutely.
up the Saab 900 just because I'm that kind of person. They did have a Saab Clarion set, but it looks like it was like mid 90s or something like that. So it looks like you just missed it. That is so cool.
Yeah.
So fuzzing.
I can't remember how that related.
Fuzzing may not
to this.
apply here, but I feel like proper testing
Yeah.
in the wild is what we'd have
Yes.
to apply here.
Yes.
That's so cool. I love this story, honely. You could have had me going for 20 more minutes
So
with this story. So I drove
I have
around,
another-
and one time it opened up.
I have another. Luckily, I think I was in. I kind of guessed the answer to that problem,
Right.
because I kind of experienced the exact same thing, sort of, a few years before.
Okay.
So I had worked for a company called Progressive Strategies. We're an analyst, a marketing tool company that made like competitive analyses and that kind of stuff. And one of my coworkers, Lewis, we had like a few rooms and a shared office floor. And he had the desk next to a window, but the window was always closed. The window always had a one of these bamboo blinds in front of it.
Right.
But he would use his mouse, and every now and then, at certain times of the day, or roughly certain times of the day, the mouse would just go haywire.
Oh, right.
And the exact same thing happened. So
Early
there's
lazy
a
Celsius.
crack of light that comes in, and just as the mouse moves into that crack of light,
Right.
and that certain time of day, the mouse goes haywire because the light's going in through between the two buttons,
Right.
When they were, I don't know, are they still optical sensors in mice? I don't know.
Still, yeah, I think they're mostly laser now instead of
Yeah.
was it IR before? They had a different light sensor.
Yeah.
It's really just a camera that detects texture, I guess.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, and then we needed laser in order to make them work on glass
Right.
to be able to
Right.
detect
Yeah.
tiny texture. Very cool.
So yeah, that was very. And so because of that, I thought, oh, could it be the light?
Yeah. So Matt,
Yeah.
our real life fuzzing tool. So I wonder, Matt, if we could somehow synthesize your fuzzing, you know, the technique. Maybe is this a technique approach, perhaps?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool. Are you one of those people who can make software break? Like I'm one of those people. Like you give me a piece of software and I will probably break it pretty quickly.
I don't know. I mean, I sometimes look for problems, but generally, I'm trying to use it the way that I want to use it the way that the people intended.
Oh, I feel
Sometimes
like
that runs into problems.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're holding it wrong kind of phone person. Remember when Apple had that antenna that went all the way around? If you bridged the gap, it would stop it from working.
Yeah, but I mean, that said, I mean, there's a few videos I've done about tools for Olama.
Right.
That just, no matter, you try to use it the way you'd expect or the way they even document.
Right.
And it just doesn't work. And then, like, come on, dude. Really?
That part is tough.
See?
I kind of have a little bit of a soft spot for that kind of thing, where you have documentation that describes something that's like out of date and doesn't apply anymore, or like never worked, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is where I feel like I could actually help out a little bit.
Well, I mean, that
First
was
thing I'm going to
definitely
do is read the docs and try to make it work. Yeah.
And that was always a problem, not always, but that was often a problem at Datadog.
Of course.
You know, building training.
Of course.
You're trying to create screenshots and images, and here's a walkthrough of how to, click the button in the top left, but then the product updates multiple times a day, and certain parts of the product update multiple times a day, and that button in the top right all of a sudden is a tab in the top left, and or other, somewhere else, and there's like, well, did you not test the training? It's like, yeah, we did, but that change happened 25 minutes ago.
Right. And I will say during the last dash, I had a similar problem with the training platform in that every time I started a lab, I would only get 5 seconds to complete it, which is pretty bad as the trainer who was trying to go through it. It was the weirdest bug. It didn't matter what I tried. It would always be 5 seconds. And then I ended up trying somebody else's laptop, and it was fine kind of thing. But this, I do wonder, though, if we're in... Now, I don't want to introduce a startup idea that someone's going to steal, but like multimodal software testing, where it can understand instructions for the workshop, can understand where the buttons are on the page, can click the buttons and pretend to finish a workshop, would be pretty handy. At least if I could send like 200 of these people to something at the same time, actually pretty handy to simulate one of these. Yeah. Well, 200 might be a lot, but like 100. I think simulates one of my workshops at least. I yet to have 200 people in an audience, but 100, that's pretty close. So getting 100 people to do this at once is not cheap, but at least would let us know for the workshop if there are any weird issues or weird issues with multiple people doing it at once, or if they start in a staggered way, because sometimes that can cause problems. Like all that stuff I think is pretty interesting. I also realized that we still have this graph up here full screen. So did we want to go through any more of these? Or I think that was the last one. It was, in fact, the last one.
It was.
So I think their conclusions are good.
Very happy.
Yeah. I think the biggest conclusion here is that like Gen AI is rapidly transforming software development. I'm stealing this as a quote. Nearly all respondents in the survey have now tried AI coding tools, either personally or professionally or both. Which is like, that's fair. So the people associated with GitHub who would have responded to the survey probably have at least tried Copilot.
Right.
Fair. Respondents note multiple benefits when using the tools, such as collaboration, system design, more strategic tasks where developers reinvest the time saved. And then the last one is, while they say their organizations are welcoming it, there's still room for progress. Like, absolutely. If I'm an IT manager managing a team, I don't know how much slack I would give them to go and research AI tools that can help them with their productivity right now.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, if I'm on like a QA team or a perf testing team, absolutely, like performance testing
Right.
team or a QA, like quality assurance, trying to make sure that there's no bugs, trying to make sure that under these stress tests that we're talking about, like we could actually set up a proper test. This I feel like is an actual benefit. And it's more like a third hand. It's not like a completely new limb. It's more adding to the task, or maybe like 100 third hands, which is kind of awesome. Being able to use that at scale, I think, is fantastic. So if I say generate me a CSV of random first names, last names, and phone numbers, this is definitely something that I can use an AI tool to do. Whereas if I had to do it on my own, I would probably end up using like the same thing a couple times, or it wouldn't be random enough, or like the distribution wouldn't be random enough for the numbers, so I couldn't test like compression in database. There's a whole bunch of things where you need like properly random and like inserted data in order to make sure that your tool is running properly. One of the ones that I spent a lot of time on with was Elasticsearch, for example, trying to simulate ingest of data that we had, like IoT information from Huawei. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but a lot of times they'd send us stuff that was just invalid because they were just starting off on their IoT journey, and they'd send us stuff. I think it's like kilograms per second for speed, like just random measurements. I'm sure I've made up or talked about this one before, but simulating that kind of stuff was difficult for us because we didn't know how bad the partners or how differently, let's say, the partner's data might be when it comes into our schema compared to theirs. So yeah, definitely see use cases there. Yeah, I see this question there. Did you see that one as well?
Oh no. Will AI improve code security? I think the answer is
right.
What is the answer? Oh, can AI think out of the box like a human can?
Yeah, so I think that's supposed to be a colon instead of a period. So I think the answer is, can AI think out of the box like a human? That's a question in the form of an answer, but yes, I would agree. So like if you're thinking about Matt in the car with the sunroof, how could we synthesize this? Like when Matt was 7, he saw an optical.
Right.
Long in the past.
So there's another tool, I think AI scientist or something that's trying to create, I think it was about creating experiments and then having the AI run through those experiments in a simulated world.
Yeah.
And one of the takes on that
AI one is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
I think one of the reports showed that one of the articles, but it was only covered in one article that I saw, but most of the articles talk about how this is a really neat thing that's being done. I feel like I saw one article that said it was one experiment the AI was trying to do. It needed more time to do it, and so the AI changed its own code to be able to run the experiment longer, which was like, Terminator going to destroy all humans kind of idea. But then no other articles covered that. So I'm wondering was it just bogus? Like there was a reporter pretty like in the last few days that had to like apologize because he made up quotes. He used AI to make up quotes.
Oh my. That kind of hurts because there's at least in my mind there's a code of ethics, I thought, for reporters that they're supposed to follow, where you don't make up news.
Yeah, I mean, there was that New York Times reporter a few years ago that made up a story. And I mean, I don't know if he's a reporter anymore.
Jason Thomas Blair, former journalist who resigned from the newspaper in May 2023 in the wake of discovery and fabrication of plagiarism in his stories.
Oh, was it only a year ago? Yeah.
Yes. I don't want to say don't trust the news, folks.
Yeah,
but also, post 2022, things are a little bit different. Yeah, there's no greater way to sow divide in a country than to tell them not to trust their news source or their government, unfortunately. Again, election year, I'm Canadian, I'm not suggesting any of this is happening. I've certainly read reports, though, about post-2022 bot farms and sock puppets, trying to spread misinformation. And this is prior to Gen AI is what I'm saying. And I can only imagine that post is worse. I've kind of stepped away from Twitter and Facebook and a lot of these areas that maybe, I don't know, are a little bit more, how do I say, where the signal to noise ratio isn't that great to begin with, and it feels like it's maybe even worse. I did notice, so I posted the link on my end, and then I posted in the chat as well. Mine didn't go right to YouTube, but yours did, which is so. I think we both answered this person a couple times here, but at least they've got a link to the survey
you did
that
the
we were
AI
looking
scientist.
at.
I've done the okay, got it.
Yeah.
And then one other, I mentioned a couple of times already that there was this other survey from Australia. It doesn't go into as many questions, but really it seemed like there were just 2 questions about what are the risks that this particular group, Australians, are concerned about. And about the big thing is AI systems acting in ways that are not safe, not trustworthy, and a lot of them seem to feel that. And I feel like there was another part of this that said not many people in Australia have been using AI.
Ah, interesting. So I wonder.
But anyway, so there's all sorts of interesting surveys that are going on about this stuff.
Yeah, and one of the comments that we had, I wasn't able to track down where it came from, but someone was saying that AI is scary from Donnie.
Yes.
Basically, as we started. And honestly, this is kind of a common opinion. So, Donnie, we're not looking down at you at all, actually. And I don't think this is an uncommon response. And I feel like there are more countries than just Australia that feel this way as well. Like we were alluding to Germany earlier and the EU maybe having a little bit more standoffish approach to AI or wait and see, which I think is rational.
Yeah, I mean, one of let's see. The thing about, I think I showed the AI needs regulation, the Economist article.
Right.
And one of the things in there was just, the threat. Let's see, let me bring that up better, this.
I'm just spamming the stream out here.
The threat should be less of, the Terminator kind of threat, or even the robots are out to kill us in, what was it, Battlestar Galactica or The Creator. Although in both of those they wanted to like coexist, but the focus should be on real risks here posed by AI that exist today, such as bias, discrimination, AI-generated disinformation, and violation of intellectual property rights.
Now, just going to take a quick step back and think about how these models are made. I will say one of the forms of discrimination that we don't talk about a lot is the fact that generally they're in English, and English has a whole bunch of like cultural differences than other languages, as well as like the culture of English language speaking nations. We have been starting to see like CJK models, so Chinese, Japanese, Korean models coming out, which I think maybe represent more of that area of the world.
Yeah.
But yeah,
there's like one university in China that has released a bunch of models.
Right.
And then there's also the Falcon models out of Dubai.
Oh, I hadn't heard of
that
those.
are Arabic.
What are they called?
Or I think an Arabic focus.
Okay.
That's the Falcon models.
Falcon? I did not know that. That's really cool.
Yeah. But Quen 2 is out of a university in China, I think.
Very cool. And I think that's where we got to get. We need more multilingual models. I think one of the main things we were trying to do is translate like between English to Japanese, Japanese back is one of those problems that was unsolvable prior to this. Pretty good now, but still doesn't understand the cultural significance of the language that it's using. So it gets context, which is awesome. Fantastic. The next is understanding the corpus of the culture and how things might be a little bit different in one or the other when it comes to translating. So what this might mean. The main problem in Japanese, for example, is that articles are dropped and that going back and forth, you need to drop them again when you go from English back to Japanese, and it can cause a whole bunch of problems.
There are, there's the idea that AI is only used for bad from the quote
that's what I was just reading, sorry. That's where my came from, my apologies.
Is common, and that actually is, let's see, this one is...
That's all about the news these days, folks.
I'm all about it.
It's got sources?
Yeah. So there was this post from Procreate. saying
Oh,
AI
yes,
is
thank
not
you.
our future.
Thank you. We're almost in the sharing mode here, but I did want to touch on this. So I thought
Yeah.
this was one reactionary, knee jerk, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, as a paying Adobe client, like absolutely, please let me not pay the monthly fee for the stuff that I'm
Sure.
not going to use. Like I totally understand where they're coming from in terms of their product and things that their market does not want to see in their product. And this
Right.
seems like a response to a lot of people saying, please don't put Gen AI in your software. And they're like, oh yeah, obviously not.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I feel
No?
like there have always been cases where there's a new technology comes out,
Right.
the loom, the whatever, and
The
it's
printing
like,
press.
we are not going to do this.
Right.
And whenever that company has said, we are not going to, use this new technology in interesting ways, then that company gets left behind, and we don't
Right.
remember them. We remember the ones that take advantage of the new technology.
And the
and so,
question here is, I think people who like to think of themselves as like traditional artists, I'm using scare quotes here, but
Yeah.
when they think of themselves as traditional artists, steeped in like paint, oil, brushes, that kind of stuff, and they're already using something on the iPad. Sorry, I'm dropping everything on my desk here today. The question is whether or not they can tell what, again, scare quotes, like what is real art versus not,
Right.
and this is like a slippery slope when it comes to
Yeah.
digital painting.
I mean, there are some people that would say, if you're opening it up in Photoshop, it's not a photo anymore.
Right.
But some of the core tools in Photoshop are just the digital equivalents of tools that have been used in a darkroom for 100 years.
Right. What's that? Leica had that partnership, right? That would say,
A watermark or like something that says this was taken in the camera.
right.
Yeah.
Content credentials, I think is what it's called. There's a term for it though. I'm trying to see what. Oh yeah, Content Authenticity Initiatives. So CAI is part of the newer Leica cameras. My understanding is like Nikon, Canon, Sony, etc. will follow suit this year or next. But yeah, being able to say that this has not been retouched. I share most of my stuff with EXIF, so you can see if it's gone through Lightroom or gone through Lightroom to Photoshop kind of thing, because it will actually put it in the EXIF.
Right.
And a lot of times I'm not editing, because in Europe, of course, they have a lot more strict guidelines in terms of what an edited photo can be. But I think what you were getting at in terms of Photoshop, like if I'm changing the white balance, probably okay. Or like there's a certain...
Well, what's your line?
Exactly. There's a certain amount
Everybody's
of
got
stuff.
their own line that, I can't cross this line. It's got to be directly from the camera. So therefore, all digital images are going to be a little fuzzy. Or they're going to be over sharpened.
Or if I take a photo of the sunset and I decide to use like shade white balance and it looks way more orange than usable,
Right.
is this okay or not? Or if I pick the wrong film type,
I mean,
and
I've
is literally
chosen a filter.
exactly.
I mean,
Used
either
an
a
orange
physical filter
Yeah.
or a filter that's on like a Fuji has a different film emulations.
Or a different
well, that's
film
not
stock,
a real photo.
Yes.
Because you've modified it.
Yes, and it's a slippery slope there too. It's difficult, but I think what they're trying to say is that standard changes, like a bit of sharpness, a bit of white balance change, like within a certain range is okay in terms of their authenticity. But what they're trying to say is like, has it been touched or not? Is this the original file? And I think that's important for journalism when it comes down to it. So when we're talking about the New York Times and I'm taking a photo of somebody, it's there's angles and then there's timing.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of stuff involved with the photo. But aside from all that, has this been modified at all? And I have not bought a Leica. This is not what I have to share today. As much as they are cool, I've still yet to pony up.
At some point, a Q whatever will be...
Q2, Q3?
I would imagine I will have one, but I can't justify it for a long time.
Currently made of unobtainium. I have spotted one in the wild at...
I've seen a few,
Glazers in Seattle. Next time you're in town, it's right by the Space Needle.
Yeah.
They had a Q in stock.
Yeah, that's where I rented a 4x5 camera once.
Oh, fantastic. I met the person who runs rentals. Yeah. She is fantastic. There you go.
I rented that probably 30 years ago, but
But definitely not there at that time.
yeah.
Do you have anything we should check out that we should know? So we talked about 2 other YouTube channels that are run by Matts that have to do with AI news. Definitely check those out so you can compare and contrast the 3 Matt AI news a trifecta here. What else did we check out?
I just saw a interesting preview for a movie.
Okay.
That looks pretty cool.
Does it
Omni
include...
Loop?
Oh, not the one I was thinking of. Okay.
Where it's kind of like Groundhog Day, but this woman wakes up like in a hospital bed, lives for a week, and then has this pill that she takes that takes her back to that hospital bed, and she's trying to convince the people that can help her solve the problem.
Interesting. Now, this is a very new movie because it's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, but also has Mary Louise Parker, and I think on IMDb it's 7.9.
It looks interesting.
It does.
And then I saw another thing that I don't actually have. I saw that there's a new version of Riven is out on like all the platforms. Like, remember the
we're talking about a game from like the late 80s?
Yeah.
Early 90s?
So Myst, then Riven. Yeah. So all done in Unreal.
Sorry.
So some of the parts where there was like a human, like a video of a human actually talking to to you, those are gone, replaced by content purely in Unreal Engine. And so that's not as good. But a lot of like where you're walking through and you see the water and you're interacting with puzzles, all that it looks pretty cool. It doesn't look cool enough for me to spend the $35 yet, but I mean, not that it doesn't look cool enough.
That's really cheap, though. Also,
I haven't bought a game for a lot of money, or that kind of money, in a while.
Well, I'm trying to see how much is The Witness, because The Witness is probably the thing that's closest to that.
Oh yeah.
And The Witness is about the same price. So yeah.
Oh, is it really?
5 more. Not to say that The Witness is better, but it's definitely inspired by Riven and the what was the one that came before
Witness
it?
Cost $40?
Yeah, US. So even more.
Oh.
Yeah. Apparently it's.
Yeah, I mean the graphics are nowhere near as good as this. What it looks like. I mean the
Witness does not look as good as really. Oh, that's
Witness doesn't look anywhere near as good as Riven.
That's pretty interesting. Okay. Not that I play them for the graphics. It's mostly about the puzzles, but still.
I was playing Witness, I think, like 4 weeks ago.
Okay, there you go.
Going through it again.
Yeah, it's almost 10 years old now. It's 8 years old for sure.
Is it really?
Yeah. Time has flied.
Jesus.
Half of that time you were probably spent at home.
Yeah.
Sorry. So good point here. So we had a Norwegian type in about the Northern Lights and playing with images.
Oh yeah.
Having seen them this year and not realize what the heck was going on, you can't really see them at all. You take a photo with your camera, you up the saturation and bring down the exposure quite a bit, and you'll see them. Cool. Also, doesn't look like that with the naked eyes, and it's neat to see a photo of it, but it's more of a scientific phenomenon at that point in time. So people definitely play with the images there. I took some photos of what looked like just little clouds kind of thing, and then realized later that was what all the hullabaloo was about.
Do you have any?
I do. I had a YouTube channel to recommend to you, and then I forgot who I'm subscribed to. So I'm subscribed to this like Matt Williams guy.
Oh, okay.
I think the cinema cartography is what I want to recommend, but honestly, under that, in terms of something that I'm subscribed to, is Paolo from Tokyo. We're gonna steal a recommendation from my significant other here. Paolo is one of these people who will go around Japan and talk about like a day in the life kind of things. And honestly, because it could be anything, like a day in the life of a trash worker, that kind of thing. But I think once you watch like 20 or 30 of these, you kind of get that there's a setup, there's some puns and stuff like that. And Paolo's generally a pretty nice guy, but it gives you a view of a country that you would rarely get by just going there, because you're not going to see this sort of behind the scenes of your favorite ramen shop, or like what actually happens in a Family Mart, or you just went to a game center and spent, I don't know, $200 trying to, use a little claw game or something to win something. And you had no idea that you could actually like nudge the attendant and then come over and make it easier for you, for example. There's a bunch of like little things. It's such random advice that I can't really, but Datadog, the company I work for, is doing a summit in Tokyo coming up. And one of my coworkers, who you know, who works on the training team, is going to go there to help with some of the workshop kind of stuff.
Oh, good.
And they asked me, is there, like, what kind of YouTube channels should I watch, that kind of stuff? And this is the one that I recommended, but because I feel like it gives you, like, an overview of Japanese culture without necessarily hitting you over the head with it, like an NHK one would, which is also pretty boring, but generally getting a little bit better these years. But NHK World is kind of the de facto recommendation. It is incredibly boring. Paolo from Tokyo is kind of boring, but also if you want to like pick the one that's around something that interests you, might be interesting. So the Game Center one I thought was really good. There's also just a whole bunch of little ones of just like how to run a karaoke box or what that looks like behind the scene. I thought was really cool, and I really do think Paolo's got a good like heartfelt channel, which is pretty rare these days on YouTube. Who are those two brothers who went out into the forest in Japan? And Logan Paul and his brother. Yes, not like that as an example.
Yeah.
So point counterpoint. Definitely from the heart. The comments are good. Supporting kind of like channel. Anyway, Paolo from Tokyo. I think it's all one word. That's Paolo from Tokyo. I would highly recommend.
Cool.
But yeah, definitely subscribe to the Technovangelist if you haven't before. He's doing this new stuff that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I'm awesome. I did watch something last night that was a good first episode, and I'm hoping for more good stuff.
Okay.
Bad Monkey on Apple TV.
Matt's only streaming service. Aside from, what was it, Disney Plus?
We have
Vaughn?
Disney Plus.
No way you're recommending something with Vince Vaughn in it. How bad is Vince Vaughn in this show?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Is Vince Vaughn by chance the bad monkey?
No, there's also a monkey. There's
Fantastic.
a monkey in the series.
Who else is in this? I think I know Rob Delaney. It's okay.
And I see Acolyte got canceled, so it's not going to have a second season, which is fine because it sucked.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So Rob Delaney's been in a few things with. Maybe not. Sorry, pardon me. That is Bad Monkey. In fact, that I'm looking at. The cover for this is terrible. Is this really good? It better be a comedy.
It is. The first episode was actually pretty good.
Okay, so the pilot. The reason the pilot better be good if it got picked up. All right. I'm just saying this. They might have had an episode 0 that we don't see, but a lot of times that first episode is like the pilot readapted for TV or what have you.
Right.
Okay. All right. I'll give it a shot.
And you still haven't seen what was it, Blue, or what was that thing called that I said?
Bluey?
No, not Bluey, but what is it? It was like
Blue Monkey?
the detective.
Is it just called Blue?
With, I feel like it was Blue something or
genetic disorder, methemoglobinemia?
No. Drama series on Apple TV.
Woman in Blue?
Sugar, not Blue.
Sugar.
I don't know. Sugar, Blue, whatever.
I will say that I saw Sugar to be watched, and instead of watching and starting Sugar, because it's on Apple TV, it's recommended, I somehow ended up watching this episode of this food show called Forks. The episode was called Forks.
Okay.
I think it's called...
I've heard of this, yeah.
It is, in fact, The Bear. So The Bear has this one episode called Forks that I watched that was phenomenal. Someone recommended to me in terms of people who don't take pride in their work. And Forks, the episode inside the show The Bear, which seems to be a little bit of like, it's just like an aside kind of thing. Like a guide-in, like a side story, was about this one worker who got hired sort of through nepotism to work in the restaurant and was in charge of just cleaning forks for like a 3-star Michelin restaurant and hated it. Thought their cousin was punishing them, blah, 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 blah. The cool part, the denouement, as it were, of the episode is when they realize, like, forks are actually pretty important. And there's a smudge, apparently, that this is how they realize that it's important. There was a smudged plate, and it became like this massive problem throughout the restaurant. And then you realize, the smudge is important. Then obviously the forks have to be clean too. And it's kind of interesting to take like care of the small things, like the little details that add up to the whole Michelin experience.
Yeah.
And I've been to like recommended or in the guidebook kind of stuff, never this fancy stuff, but I can understand when it's this serious for the restaurant that even having clean forks is important. But yeah, as somebody who takes pride in their work, I think for me the message was kind of lost. maybe at a different point in time in my career would have been really impactful in
Right.
terms of like what is important and what's not. And it turns out presentation in a restaurants that's rated on looks and how the service is. Yeah,
Right.
definitely pretty important. There we go. the thumb. Should we end it? What do you think? I could keep recommending stuff.
I think so. I think so.
Sorry about
Was there? No, that was it. Okay. Well, I mean, sugar is. I mean, really.
I gotta watch it.
You-
Like, you're the third person to
it's-
recommend it to me.
It is. It's a
Two
good
other people
show.
were Matt Williams and Ted.
It's a pretty good show, and then there's an episode. It's like, what?
Oh, okay.
It's a
I will say Cheers is getting pretty.
yeah. yeah.
Might be time to switch. I'm like halfway through season 2, and I'm like, there's how many seasons of this? I'm not sure. I'm not the type
Yeah.
of person to just put on a show in the background and kind of let it go, which is what I think people mostly
Right.
expect. I'm
Right.
trying to study the show, and it's just making me realize that TV from this era,
Yeah, I mean, what else was on at that time?
not much. I will watch Sugar. Thank you. I'll get on it.
Yeah.
I do actually like it.
Yeah.
All right, let's find that end stream
Okay.
button.
All right. It's pretty quick and easy. We're gonna do it. 1, 2, 3, click.